Hi everyone, I'm Suniti, and in 2006 I met grief. I was 17 when I lost my dad, and every value, belief and idea that I had growing up changed. It was like being thrown out of an aeroplane without a parachute. I very quickly learned that grief wasn't understood well or talked about in society, and I took it upon myself to start to unravel the complexities of my grief. And today, I'm a certified bereavement counsellor and a hypnotherapist alongside my career as a dentist. In my speech today, I aim to show you what the grief process entails and how I have learned through my own life experiences, research, and evidence that it is possible to reclaim your life after loss. So whether your experience of grief is mild, moderate, or severe, or if you've never been faced with grief before, the things I'll discuss today are of significant value because grief is the most certain eventuality that we will all face in our life. I often explain the journey in grief as a journey through Grief Mountain and learning to navigate our journey through all of its ever-changing terrains. Some days the path remains flat and easy to tread, and we may feel like things have become better or easier. Other days are more testing. The path is rocky or bumpy, and we may see ourselves slipping back to an area we had passed long before. Around the cliff edges and the dark spots, we're sure to find a ladder or a rope when we need it the most, and with that, our journey continues. But what do we really know about grief? Grief is the emotion of intense sorrow when we lose something that we truly value. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a real pioneer in our understanding of death and grief, and she developed the concept that these occur in 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. We now know that these stages don't apply to everyone and that the grief process is not linear. It comes and goes in waves, much like the terrains of Grief Mountain. An alternative theory is that the grief process involves tasks, and this confirms our ability to act and take control. There are 4 tasks of grieving: accepting the reality of our loss, processing our pain, adjusting to the world without the deceased, and the final one is finding a meaningful connection to the deceased while still being able to move forward with our life. The process of grief is different, and it will be different for every person, and that's heavily dependent on the 7 factors that shape our grief. They are who we have lost, so our direct relationship to that person. Have we lost a partner, a parent, a sibling, a child, a friend, a relative, a co-worker, or a pet? We need to consider the nature of our attachment to that person. How was our relationship when they were here? We need to consider our previous experiences of grief, how that person died, concurrent stresses in our life, our social support system, and our very own personality type. What does grief feel like? After loss, the things that we knew to make us feel happy, safe, find peace and joy don't seem effective anymore. We start to dislike these things and avoid them because they become a reminder of our pain, intensifying it and confirming we have lost something that is irreplaceable. If you've ever met my husband, he will tell you that Suniti loves her phone, and I do. I rely on it, I need it, and it's valuable to me. I work on my phone, and I have the most precious memories of my family on it. I'd like you to experience something with me, so feel free to close your eyes or lower your gaze. I'd like you to imagine that you're going about your day as normal, managing your tasks, responsibilities, and for some reason or another, whether it's to pay for something or to check your calendar, you reach for your phone. Where is your phone? It was right there. As you search the area around you, you unzip your pockets, you feel around, moving the contents of your bag, A sense of panic rises. I'd like you to imagine that very moment it dawns on you that you have in fact lost your phone. Gutted, helpless, frustrated and angry. All the things that you can now not do without your phone start to reel through your mind. Everything that becomes difficult starts to reel through your mind. I mean, we're talking about a phone here. Something on a cognitive level we all know we can replace. But I'd like you to imagine for a moment that that were a person, someone you love. And when you look for them, you need them, you reach for them, they simply cannot be found. I'd like you to open your eyes, because that is what grief feels like. You lose something so precious and so valuable to you, and each time you realize you need it, it becomes more and more apparent that it's never ever going to come back. There's no replacement, no rewind, no reset, and no backup. It's done. In grief, simple daily tasks become a challenge, and that is why people become demotivated. They struggle to wake up in the morning. After my dad passed away, our family dynamic changed. Each time we did simple things like sit around the table to eat, get in the car, or plan our food shopping, grief forced us to reorganize ourselves, how we sat, who did what, and how we did it. We weren't 4 anymore, and we needed to adjust to becoming 3. So, thoughts become things, and I'm sure you've heard of that before. Grief is unique and personal to each person. However, in my observations as a grief counsellor, I have witnessed some similarities in the challenging thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that people face. There are thoughts that evoke emotions: anger, fear, anxiety, worry, insecurity, sometimes even relief, depending on the circumstances. And these emotions lead us into further thoughts. How will I cope in the future? Fear of family judgment, societal pressure, cultural expectation. And those thoughts lead us into further emotions: loneliness, guilt, shame. Our thoughts and emotions create a physical response in us via our bodily sensations: a racing heart, muscle tension, headaches. Our behaviors: crying, isolation, social withdrawal, insomnia, the expression of anger. If the grief is complicated, there's the added bewilderment, ruminating over the questions that will never be answered. Why? How? What if? I have seen this concept in multiple theories of how thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations are interconnected, and how our thoughts, especially negative ones, can trap us in a negative cycle. How we can move away from this cycle is the basis of so many historic and modern forms of therapy, including Aaron Beck's theory of cognitive behavior therapy, the rules of the mind in hypnotherapy, and the ABC model of learned optimism by Martin Seligman. Optimism and pessimism. Optimism and pessimism are attitudes that shape the way that we see the world and what is happening around us. An optimist sees hardship as temporary, isolated events, and they consider ways to improve things for themselves. But a pessimist, they see hardship as permanent, pervasive, and they feel powerless. A pessimist can learn to change their attitude to feel more optimistic. But I am mindful that the word optimism may be difficult to receive to anyone who's in the deepest part of their grief or any other hardship that they face. But I will remind you at this point of Grief Mountain and how our journey is ever changing. But how do we change? There comes a point, a moment, or a time where we have the motivation to change. And it's at that point that we need to reevaluate ourselves. And we can do that with self-leadership. Self-leadership was coined by Charles Manns in 1983. And it means we hold ourselves accountable for the outcomes that we create. It means we choose who we are, what we do, and who we become by identifying what we need to learn in order to grow in alignment with the desired outcomes, whether that's improving our sleep, feeling less anxious, less hopeless or helpless. We need to create a process that allows us the space to evolve with our grief. And we can because of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the way the brain's wiring is adapting structurally and functionally in response to everything that we experience around us. And that rewiring is constantly happening without our awareness. Professor Richard Davidson has stated that it is possible for us to harness the power of neuroplasticity, create new neural pathways in order to create intentional changes in our life. And he has shown with MRI scanning that it's possible to see visible structural changes in the brain in just 2 weeks of creating intentional changes in our life. I'd like you to picture something with me. I'd like you to picture a gate that you have access to, and that's your goal. For some reason or another, the route you have been taking to get to that gate you realize it's far too long. You need to find a new route, and that's your motivation for change. When you reevaluate, you see that you can get to the gate through a field, but that field is full of long, thick grass. You start to tread that grass, and the first few times you do this, it will be difficult. You'll have to consciously think about what you're doing. You may stumble, you may fall, you may want to turn back, and it will take you time and effort. But with persistence and resilience, what you do is you flatten that grass. You remove the hurdles and you create a pathway. And soon you're able to whiz down the field to the gate without needing to think about it. And that is the concept of how you build a neural pathway. That's neuroplasticity. It's how we learn, unlearn, and relearn in order to create intentional change. The desire and motivation to change come at different points for all of us. We have a void in us that was previously filled with the love that we received from a person. And healing comes at the point that we accept that void as a part of us. And it's only then that we can learn to make it the home of other forms of peace, love, and joy, whether that's in relationships, hobbies, rituals, acts of self-care and kindness, whatever way finds or gives you peace. You see, the outcomes that we create in any situation in our life, and not just grief, are the result of how we learn to leverage the knowledge we gain through our experiences and reclaim aspects of our life. I learned to do this in order to find peace, and it changed my life. It's also empowered me to help so many others. So I'd like to leave you with a quote today by psychiatrist Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response lies a space. And in that space lies our power to choose a response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Thank you very much.